So why use a midge and Baetis crossover pattern like the Midge-May Be? To show why, I modified a hatch chart for the upper Arkansas River in Colorado to only show when midges and Baetis hatch versus the competing hatches and drift occur from all other species. This information is summarized on the bottom line of this chart, which shows the better times for using Midge-May Be. That is, when there are overlapping, often prolific hatches of midges and Baetis in mid-spring and late summer, early fall. The advantage of using a crossover patterns at these times is that it can be used to target both of these species and perhaps microcaddis as well, with a single fly that suggests both an adult and an emerger without having to figure out exactly what the trout are taking. The modified hatch charts also indicates the fishability of the Midge-May Be, namely that the mid-spring midge Baetis hatch can be overshadowed by other species drifting in the subsurface, as well as the prolific Brachycentrus caddis hatch that comes on in mid-April and through Mother's Day. Fall is a great time to fish the Midge-May Be as competing hatches have played out. The terrestrials are mostly done after the first freezes, and insect drift declines as the water temperature decreases. When a trout looks up at an insect floating on the surface film, they see an image of the insect through a liquid lens formed at the air-water interface. The insect image is distorted by this watery lens that it rests on, because the lens itself changes shape as waves pass by. At the same time, the details of the insect are somewhat obscured because the light is scattered by solid particles suspended in the water. Here we are looking at an image of the underside of a Baetis nymph, illustrating how a trout looking up at an insect sees a view of that insect that is sharply foreshortened. So when viewed from underwater, the upwing of a Baetis fly can be foreshortened to take on the look of a midge's tent-like wings that rest over that insect's back. Another way that midge and Baetis look similar is how they impact the surface film. So they both depress the film. There's photographic evidence that they both depress the film, and so should their imitations. The importance of this surface depression and dimpling of the film is that that's one of the ways that trout target their prey. And so here's evidence, the photographic evidence that mayflies depress the film, and as well as midges can depress the film. Here's a phantom midge. You can clearly see because of this probable polarization effect or something. You can see that it's depressing the film, both has a circular dent in the film, as well as these points where it dimples the film with its legs. So a fly design to emulate these guys should do the same. And here I've taken a picture with the overhead light showing its distortion as the light gets distorted as it goes around the depression. And the legs show up as little points where they dimple the film, show up as little points of light. So that's very similar to what the naturals do. And so this is a pretty good imitation of them. So tying the Midge-May Be today. It's a purpose-built Midge Baetis crossover pattern that has trident tails like seen on a Baetis-Mayfly, but with a downwing like a midge, as well as a body that suggests both insects, that is, a thin abdomen and a leggy thorax. The hook I use is a crossover in size-wise, or it's a compromise, because I'm tying a midge, which is going to be like a size 18 down through 26, and trying to emulate as well a mayfly pattern, which is going to be like 16 to 22. The crossover point is about a size 20. So today I'm tying on a size 20 TMC 100 SPBL, which is a 1.5x gap and a heavy wire hook. I like these heavier wire hooks, although they tend to sink the fly, because I often catch pretty big fish on this fly. So I got tired of the light wire hooks straightening out because I like to horse my fish in and get them off and back in the water quickly. All right, so here's the hook. I've already tied in the thread, cut it off, and then wound to the back to give me a good thread base. The first thing I do is tie in the tails. I use the straight fibers from moose, a moose body. This is moose body. So I do a trident style tail, which is 3 fibers, and I hand stack them. So they're here, and I'm going to line them up by hand stacking. If it was more than just 3, I would go to, a hair stacker. But all right, so the tails are going to come out about the length of the shank. I'm tying on a little bit bigger hook today so it's a little easier for y'all to see what I'm doing here. All right, so now I'm going to flare the legs out by passing thread between them. So I go to, looking from the front of the fly, I'm going to come up over and to the left-hand side and down between the center and the left-hand moose tail. And then come up between the center and the right side one. And I pull the thread forward and close it off. I pull that one back in. So you can repeat the process until you get a good wedge of thread there. And there's the trident tail, you can see. So the function of the tail is both as an outrigger, so the fly lands flat, stays flat on the water, depresses the film and dimples it, as well as extra flotation to keep the hook up. And it emulates the tails of a mayfly, as well as the legs of a midge. A midge holds its front 2 legs out in front of it. And so although these are on the back of the fly, the trout really not aware of what the back or the front of the fly is. It just sees a profile that it is attractive to it, and it bites. So this is the thing. It can either look like the midge 4 legs or the tail of a mayfly. So I'm taking a dry fly quality grizz, which I'm going to palmer up the body. And I want a pretty long, narrow feather, kind of there. And I'm going to trim off the downy barbs and expose part of the stem. So I take the grizzly feather that's been trimmed of all the soft downy feathers and exposed the stem, and I tie it in. Rest in front of the tails. I cover the feather and wind forward, giving me a good thread base to palmer forward on. So I take the hackle pliers, and these small feathers, you got to have a light hand. I try to tie the leg under the palmer, one of the tails that is. Okay. So I wind it forward side by side to give me a segmented body like the naturals. Both mayfly and midges have segmented abdomens. I'm tying in a lot of feather because I'm going to trim this reverse mohawk style, and it cuts out a lot of the barbs. So for good flotation, I tie a pretty dense palmer. Then I do 4 wraps to hold it. And like I said, we're going to do the reverse mohawk here. So I'm trying to get basically a 2-dimensional fly that's going to sit on the film. I'm hoping you can see that it's pretty much two-dimensional, that it's in the plane. All the hackles are in the plane of the hook shank. And the tails are too. All right, now for the wing. First I build up the head, because where I tied it down, there's a little downslope, and it can make your wing stand up too much. It wedges up the wing. So I build up a little platform of thread that the wing can sit on, and it will lay flatter. I use CPE, which is chlorinated polyethylene, for wing. It's a really tough bagging material. It's durable, waterproof, lightweight, and it's tear resistant. So it's pretty good wing. It's one of the evolving things of this fly. I've tried many different wing materials, and CPE seems to be good. This is thinner than I would like. This is a 1 mil material, so I'm doubling it up. By cutting down the seam, I basically double up the CPE. I'm cutting a 2 millimeter wide strip, approximately, by about 15 millimeters to give me something to work with to tie in. But I will trim it down later to hook shank length, which is typical of the midges and mayflies as well. So you got this rolling deal. So you got to start the wing on this side. Pinch it in. Try not to get too many of your side hackles. Like that. Just trying to get the little pieces of plastic out of the hook eye. I spent a long time on flies making sure the hook eye is clear, because I hate getting on the stream and not have a hook eye glued or otherwise covered over. Okay, so I've got the wing down. It's a low down wing over the body, a down wing, and then I'm going to trim it at hook shank length into a V, sort of like natural midges, and then groom it a little bit. Okay, then I'm going to whip finish. Cut off. So, and I trim again. Some of the fackles have gotten down. So I'm trying to get, like I said, this two-dimensional fly with the trident tails. I'm hoping you can see this better, but it's quite flat lying. So the whole point is that, like we saw in the pictures of the naturals, that we're depressing the film and we're dimpling it. And that's the first cue to trout that food's coming, is when they see these depressions in the film that are dimpled. It knows that it knows perhaps an insect is coming down to them. All right, the other thing about this fly is it suggests the adult forms. It also could be a dry emerger where the wing has come out on, say, a mayfly and it's not inflated yet, or it could be a cripple where the wing is never going to inflate. So it's crossing over between different stages of life in a mayfly and a midge. And also I'd like to say that the wing, the down wing, if you're looking underneath, the down wing of the midge could look like a upwing of a mayfly, but highly foreshortened. So the trout is looking at this from underneath, And that's part of the crossover effect here, is that we're seeing a foreshortened mayfly wing or a down midge wing. All right, there it is, the Midge-May Be.